The desert planet burned under the relentless sun, its orange sands stretching farther than the eye could see. Small human settlements dotted the horizon, built from rugged metals and solar panels that reflected the harsh light. Among these settlements was a research facility that many said held secrets worth more than gold, though few outsiders had ever been allowed inside. For Ethan, it was just another day of fixing machines, checking engines, and keeping the colony's lifelines alive. He wiped the sweat from his forehead as the heat pressed against his skin. The air was still, almost too still, and a quiet tension hummed in the wind. Ethan had learned to trust his instincts over the years, and something about that quiet made him uneasy. He turned just in time to see a bright flare erupt from the research facility, followed by a deafening explosion that sent shockwaves through the ground. Dust, smoke, and burning debris shot into the sky like fireworks sparks gone wrong. Without thinking, Ethan bolted toward the chaos. His boots sank slightly in the hot sand as he ran, his mind racing faster than his legs. He didn't stop to grab a helmet or a fire suit. There wasn't time. All that mattered was the figure he saw trapped near the center of the building, a woman, pinned beneath twisted metal and flames. Her hair, dark and glimmering in the firelight, whipped across her face as she struggled to move. The fire roared louder, hungry and unrelenting. Sparks leaped into the air, igniting everything they touched. Ethan ignored the pain in his arms and chest as he dodged collapsing beams and shards of glass. His heart pounded and his lungs burned with smoke, but he refused to turn back. He had always believed that when someone's life hung in the balance, hesitation could be fatal. He reached her just as part of the ceiling fell nearby, sending clouds of smoke and dust into the air. The woman gasped, coughing violently, her eyes wide with fear. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, quickly assessing her weight. She was lighter than he expected, almost fragile, but her presence carried an unspoken strength, something he couldn't quite name. "Hold on. I've got you," he shouted, lifting her with all the strength his arms could muster. Her arms flailed weakly, but she didn't resist. Together they stumbled toward a narrow corridor that remained untouched by the flames. The heat was almost unbearable, and every step forward seemed to drag on forever. The walls around them groaned and cracked, warning that the building could collapse at any second. Outside, the colony's residents had begun to gather, watching in horror and awe. Some shouted encouragement, while others froze, unsure if anyone would make it out alive. Dust and smoke filled the sky, dimming the sunlight and turning the world a dull orange-gray. Ethan could barely see through the haze, but he kept moving, driven by a fierce determination that had never left him. Finally, they reached the last doorway, a small exit leading to the sand outside. Ethan stumbled over a fallen beam but managed to push through, emerging into the bright light just as a massive portion of the building behind him collapsed. Flames shot into the sky and a cloud of smoke swallowed the remains of the facility. He laid the woman on the sand gently, shielding her from the worst of the heat. Medics rushed forward, eyes wide with surprise and relief. They immediately took over, dragging her to a nearby emergency tent and hooking her up to monitors. Ethan stepped back, breathing hard, sweat and soot streaking his face. He looked at the woman he had just saved, expecting gratitude, maybe fear, maybe pain. Instead, he saw her eyes flicker open, luminous, deep, and strangely mesmerizing. She stared at him for a long moment, her gaze steady and calm despite the chaos around her. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. There was something about her eyes, something that seemed not entirely human. He shook his head, telling himself he was imagining things. Scientists could have genetic enhancements, or maybe it was just the smoke playing tricks on him. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. Her lips moved slightly, forming sounds that didn't resemble any language he had ever heard. The words were soft, melodic, like a song he couldn't understand. He frowned, leaning closer to hear better, but she only smiled faintly and closed her eyes again. The medics motioned for him to step back, and he did, watching as they carefully tended to her injuries. He noticed faint markings on her skin, thin lines that glowed briefly under the heat of the sun. She shivered despite the warmth, and for a moment he felt a strange connection, as if she were reaching out to him silently without words. Later, after the fire had been mostly contained, Ethan stood at the edge of the sand dunes, looking back at the smoking ruins. The air still smelled of ash and metal, and the ground was littered with charred debris. The medics had taken her into custody for further treatment, and Ethan was left with a lingering unease. He had saved her life, yes, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. He remembered the way she moved, the faint glow of her skin, the music-like sound of her voice. It didn't fit with any human he had ever met, but he shrugged it off. He didn't know alien biology, didn't know anything about distant worlds, and most of all, he didn't think anyone in the colony would believe him if he tried to explain. That night, Ethan returned to his small quarters exhausted but restless. He couldn't sleep, images of the fire and her luminous eyes replaying in his mind. He thought about the risks he had taken, the courage that had propelled him forward, and he realized something that made him both proud and humble. Bravery wasn't about strength or weapons, it was about acting when it mattered most, even when the odds were against you. Meanwhile, far above the planet, a sleek alien ship hovered silently, almost invisible against the dark sky. Inside, observers watched the events unfold with careful attention. One of them spoke softly, almost reverently, in a language Ethan couldn't understand. The woman he had rescued, they noted, was indeed their princess, sent to study humans. Her life had been endangered, but now it was saved by a human of all beings. The alien observers exchanged glances. "He does not yet understand who she is," one said, "but his actions reveal a rare quality. Humanity is stronger than we believed." Back on the desert surface, Ethan sat alone, thinking about the strange girl he had rescued. He didn't know her name, didn't know her world, and didn't even know if she could speak his language. Yet he felt an unexplainable bond, as if their fates had briefly intertwined for a reason beyond understanding. Over the next few days, the colony slowly returned to normal. Investigators combed through the ruins while Ethan resumed his routine of repairing engines and monitoring equipment. But he found himself distracted, often glancing toward the medical tent where she remained. Every now and then he caught glimpses of her, a flash of dark hair, a glimpse of glowing eyes, or a faint smile when she noticed him nearby. She didn't speak much at first, only observing him quietly. Ethan tried to communicate, showing her devices, explaining his work, and offering simple conversations. She listened, nodded, and sometimes responded with small gestures or sounds he didn't recognize. The medics warned him not to get too involved, reminding him that she was under special protection. But he couldn't help it. There was something about her presence, something that drew him closer despite the rules and dangers. One evening, as the twin suns set over the dunes, Ethan brought a small toolkit to the tent. He had been repairing a damaged power unit for her room, and she watched him work silently. When he finished, he stepped back, wiping his hands on his pants. She looked at him and, for the first time, spoke a few words in a language he could understand. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice smooth and musical, yet undeniably human this time. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "You don't have to thank me, I just did what anyone would do." She shook her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "No human would. You risked everything." Ethan felt a mixture of pride and confusion. He had saved her, yes, but he had never imagined she was anything more than a scientist. Perhaps a visiting dignitary. The idea that she might be special or even royal never crossed his mind. Yet something in her gaze told him that she was far more than she appeared. As the night deepened, Ethan left the tent, stepping outside to watch the stars. The desert was quiet, the air cool against his sweat-streaked skin. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that saving her life had set something in motion, something larger than either of them could see. Above, the alien ship continued to hover, its sensors quietly tracking Ethan and the girl. Somewhere in the distance, unseen and unknown, decisions were being made that could change the course of both human and alien lives. But for now, the moment belonged to Ethan, the human who had braved the flames, unaware that the life he had saved was no ordinary one. And in that quiet desert night, as the stars shimmered like scattered diamonds, the first threads of a story far greater than any fire or explosion began to weave themselves around two unlikely souls, bound together by courage, destiny, and the spark of something extraordinary. Days passed, and the desert sun continued to beat down on the colony, relentless and unyielding. Ethan returned to his routines, fixing engines, checking equipment, and walking through the settlement with the quiet assurance of someone who knew his place in the world. But no matter how busy he stayed, his thoughts kept drifting back to the woman he had saved. the girl whose presence felt both familiar and impossible. Her name, he had learned, was Lyria, though she still spoke little of her life before the explosion. Each day she grew stronger, recovering quickly from the burns and smoke inhalation that should have left her weakened for weeks. The medics marveled at her resilience, noting her rapid healing and unusual endurance. Ethan watched her closely, noticing small things others might miss. The way her eyes adjusted to the sunlight almost instantly, or the subtle way her body seemed to sense danger before it appeared. He didn't speak of it aloud. He didn't want anyone thinking him crazy. And yet, with each passing hour, it became more obvious that she was unlike any human he had ever met. One afternoon, Ethan carried a delicate piece of equipment into her medical tent. The small device had been damaged in the fire and he wanted to repair it for her. She watched him quietly, her luminous eyes following his every movement, her fingers occasionally brushing the device with curiosity. "You work well with machines," she said softly, her voice still carrying that musical quality that made him listen more carefully than necessary. "I've done this my whole life," Ethan replied, trying to keep his tone casual. "Engines, power units, anything that needs fixing." He adjusted a small wire, his fingers steady and precise. "It's what keeps life running around here." She nodded, studying him with an intensity that made him slightly uncomfortable. "Human, you take risks for others without knowing what you gain." Ethan paused, looking up at her. "I don't do it for gain. If someone's life is in danger, you act. That's all there is to it." Lyria's lips curved into a faint smile. Rare. Very rare. The days blurred into a routine of quiet observation, small conversations, and the occasional shared silence. Ethan began to notice more unusual traits. Her reflexes were astonishingly fast, her understanding of complex mechanisms almost instantaneous, and her instincts almost preternatural, often saved them from minor accidents in the tent. Yet despite these differences, she was gentle, curious, and increasingly open with him. One evening, as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the desert in long, dark shadows, Lyria motioned for Ethan to sit beside her. She held the repaired device in her hands, her fingers tracing the smooth surface as if it held memories of another world. "There is something you should know," she said quietly, her voice calm but deliberate. Ethan's heart skipped. He had suspected as much for days, but now she was speaking directly. "What is it?" "I am not like the humans here," she continued, her eyes fixed on the device but glowing faintly under the dim light. "I am from another world. I am a princess sent to observe your kind in secret." Ethan froze, the screwdriver in his hand falling to the floor with a soft clink. "Princess?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "You mean alien?" She nodded, finally meeting his eyes. "Yes, my people watch many planets, many civilizations. Your courage, your bravery, your compassion, it is remarkable. That is why I observe you closely." Ethan swallowed hard. Everything he thought he knew about the fire, about saving her, about the world he lived in, it all seemed smaller now. And yet, rather than fear, he felt a swell of pride. Somehow, in the face of stars and alien powers he couldn't even imagine, the human act of saving someone in danger still mattered. "So, you're telling me I saved an alien princess?" he said, trying to keep his voice light, though the weight of it pressed on him. "Yes," she replied softly, "and in doing so you showed qualities most of my kind rarely see. You risked your life for another without thought of reward, without expectation of honor. That is what makes you remarkable." Ethan felt warmth rise to his cheeks. "I was just trying to help. I didn't even know who she was." She laughed softly, a sound that was almost like music in the quiet tent. "That is exactly why your courage is real. You did not act out of duty or obligation. You acted out of the heart." The night grew quiet, the twin moons rising and casting silver light across the desert. Ethan and Lyria sat together, speaking in fragments, gestures, and shared silences. She revealed little about her world, only small hints. A planet of cities that floated in the sky, beings who communicated through thought and emotion, a civilization far older than humanity. Each detail was mesmerizing, each story a window into a reality he could barely imagine. But despite her alien heritage, Ethan saw something deeply familiar in her. She laughed at small human jokes, marveled at simple machines, and even hesitated when a mistake risked damaging equipment. She was extraordinary, yes, but also relatable. She was learning, just like humans do, and in that she was not so different. Over the next few weeks, their bond strengthened. Ethan began to teach her about human life in simple ways, how engines worked, how food was prepared, how the colony survived in the harsh desert. In return, she shared knowledge that challenged his understanding of physics, energy, and life itself. Yet even in the presence of her superior intellect and alien abilities, Ethan's human ingenuity and courage impressed her. One morning, a warning came from the observation tower. A small meteor shower was approaching, and debris could strike the colony if not properly deflected. The colony's defenses were basic, mostly automated shields and rudimentary laser arrays, but Ethan saw an opportunity. He knew he could guide Lyria in using her abilities subtly, without revealing her full potential, to strengthen the defenses. Together, they worked through the day. Ethan calculated angles, reinforced shields, and organized evacuation protocols, while Lyria moved with precision, adjusting equipment in ways that seemed effortless. The meteor shower arrived, a storm of glowing rocks hurtling through the thin atmosphere. The shields held, strengthened by Lyria's subtle adjustments, and not a single human was injured. Afterward, the colony celebrated quietly, amazed at how quickly the defenses had been restored. Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing he had helped save lives. But he also noticed Lyria watching him differently, admiration in her luminous eyes. That night, as they walked across the desert dunes under the stars, Lyria finally spoke more openly about her feelings. "Humans, you surprise me. You do not possess the speed, strength, or advanced technology my people have, yet your bravery and ingenuity often surpass them. It is remarkable." Ethan smiled, feeling a humility he had never known before. "I guess it's not about what you have. It's about what you choose to do. Anyone could sit back and do nothing. I couldn't." Her eyes glimmered, reflecting the starlight. "That is why I'm drawn to your kind, to you." For a moment, silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but filled with understanding. Despite the vast gulf between their worlds, they shared a connection forged in fire, risk, and human courage. Ethan realized that this bond wasn't just about admiration or curiosity. It was about recognition, the acknowledgement that even in a universe so vast, human bravery could matter profoundly. In the following days, Lyria began to train openly with Ethan, learning to understand human machines, strategies, and even social dynamics. She laughed at human mistakes, marveled at simple joys, and slowly revealed more of herself, though still carefully concealing her full powers. Ethan, in turn, taught her patience, resilience, and the human way of facing danger with determination rather than fear. Through it all, Ethan remained unaware of just how much his actions had already affected her people. Far above the planet, the alien observers reported back to their council, noting the extraordinary qualities of the human who had saved the princess. "His bravery is unparalleled," one said. "He is an anomaly, even among humans." But Ethan didn't seek praise, medals, or recognition. His satisfaction came from the quiet moments, the look of gratitude in Lyria's eyes, the shared laughter when a repair went wrong, the thrill of knowing that courage and compassion could truly make a difference. One evening, as the twin moons hung high and the desert cooled, Lyria turned to him and said softly, "Ethan, the fire was the beginning. Your choices, your actions, your heart, they are why I survived, and why I trust you. Not all humans are like you, but those who are, they are capable of greatness beyond measure." Ethan looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. He had never sought to be extraordinary, but here he was, standing beside someone who could command entire civilizations, who could shape worlds with knowledge he could barely comprehend, and yet he felt equal in the moments that mattered most. And as the stars shimmered above them, Ethan understood something vital: human courage. Compassion and determination were not small. Even in a universe full of aliens, advanced civilizations, and unimaginable dangers, humanity's greatest power was its heart. It was that heart that had saved Lyria, forged a bond that transcended worlds, and proved that even one human could change the course of events far beyond their own understanding. In the quiet desert night, with the stars stretched endlessly above and the twin moons casting silver light on the sand, Ethan and Lyria stood together. Their worlds were different, their lives extraordinary,